Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Smith. I've been conducting interviews with retired and former SWCC operators. Uh, we're talking about operator syndrome, traumatic brain injury, major orthopedic injuries, and the nexus of things that SWCC operators endure over long term. This particular interview is number 3, and it's with Stephen Chance. All right, so interview number 3 was conducted over Facebook video chat. Steve answered questions from the following questionnaire formats, and he gave permission to produce this presentation and share it openly. We covered the operator syndrome questionnaire, the GAD-7, which is generalized anxiety, the PLC-5, which is PTSD, the PHQ-9, which is a basic health questionnaire, the NSI, which is the Neurobehavior Symptoms Inventory, and we did a SWCC background questionnaire just to figure out what his background was when he came into the SWCC community, things like that. Okay, Steve Chance, he was a SWCC operator. Everybody in the community probably knows who he is. He was in the Navy for 17 years. He spent 15 years as a SWCC operator. He did 3 of the traditional SWCC deployments, and he did too many of those flyaway missions to really figure out how much time that was, but more than 12 months of overtime or overseas doing those flyaway missions. So at least 4 deployments worth of time overseas, if not more. He served several years in training department, which most of us was underneath him at some point in time in training. He served at SBU 12 for his entire career as a SWCC operator. He worked on the CFOX, the PBs, the HSBs, different ribs, and the 11-meter rib, of course, or the P rib, and then the 11-meter rib. He has 15,000 plus hours of SWCC fast boat time and an estimated greater than 1.8 million wave impacts, producing whiplash, possibly, and mTBI. And basically, we're talking about microconcussions. All right, for those of you that don't know, Navy SWCC is a special class of elite naval warriors who have been a decisive force behind some of America's most important secret missions. Special boat operations have unique and often deadly challenges due to the combination of operating powerful, sophisticated machines designed for speed and stealth in some of the planet's most inhospitable environments. The average career SWCC operator experiences mTBI and major orthopedic injuries over the course of their career. In peacetime and wartime, Naval Special Warfare conducts missions in over 70 countries, 365 days a year. The sum of SWCC injury does not accumulate until the operator retires. All right, so before we move forward and talk about Steve, we need to talk about operator syndrome because it pertains to him as well as all the other SWCC operators. This is a research that was done and a term that was coined by Dr. Christopher Frew. There's a DOI link there, and we're going to talk more about it over the next couple of slides. Operator syndrome is a nexus of psychiatric illnesses and disorders along with chronic major orthopedic injuries. Every special operations force individual from all the major branches eventually ends up with operator syndrome. More specifically, we're talking about Navy SWCCs, and they are classified as part of this group of individuals. So as I mentioned, operator syndrome has a nexus of symptoms, and as you're looking here at this slide presentation, this is the list of symptoms that individuals in the soft community end up with over time. So we have traumatic brain injury. Everything that you see here in red is are the things that Steve said he has and that he deals with on a daily basis. Traumatic brain injury, the endocrine dysfunction, obstructive sleep apnea, chronic joint pain, orthopedic problems and headaches, depression and suicide, PTSD, anger, worry, rumination, and stress reactivity, being on guard or hypervigilant, memory issues, concentration issues, and cognitive impairments, vestibular issues, and challenges of the transition from military to civilian life. So Steve and I talked about all of his comorbidities that he now has due to SWCC boat operations. So here's a list, and we're gonna go through them. He was diagnosed with TBI, and he has severe symptoms. He was diagnosed with PTSD. He has endocrine dysfunction. He was diagnosed with sleep apnea. He has headaches and he has migraines. He has chronic pain. He is hypervigilant. He has severe memory loss and concentration and difficulty issues, difficulty making decisions, high irritability, and dizziness. Steve also has a high level of mental fatigue. He has C3 and C7 surgeries, L5, S1 surgeries, moderate sensitivity to noise, numbness in his extremities, executive function issues, moderate anxiety, and lethargy. Okay, just like every SWCC that I have talked to, including myself, these are some of the symptoms experienced by Steve while operating high-speed SWCC boats. Fatigue due to wave pounding, dizziness due to wave pounding. He's experienced blackouts due to wave pounding on SWCC boats, experienced whiplash due to wave pounding, confusion, lack of focus and concentration due to wave pounding. He's experienced whole body wave pounding and whiplash at speeds of 65 miles an hour. Definitely, he was out there on those HSBs, and they were probably the most violent boats that the SWCC community's ever seen. He experienced wave pounding in rough seas, 10 feet and bigger than 10 feet, and talked about many different situations he was in where they were just getting pounded, losing comms, losing all their electronics, all kinds of stuff. He experienced orthopedic injuries due to wave pounding on SWCC boats. He's got problems with his knees, his shoulders, his back, and like everyone, all of us, he actually urinated blood out there pounding on those waves. So one of the focuses of this presentation and all these presentations is traumatic brain injury. So we're going to talk about traumatic brain injury for Steve Chance, former SWCC operator. The average SWCC logs 3,000 hours of boat time per deployment cycle. Roche's 1994 study conducted underway studies on NSW fast boats for a period of 6 days over 36 hours, which totaled 8,610 wave impacts ranging from 2 to 25 G-forces. Of the 8,610 wave impacts, 4,496 impacts range above 5 Gs. Very significant. These 4,496 5G or greater impacts in 36 hours equals out to about 124 an hour, which is significant enough to cause whiplash and mTBI. The average SWCC operator endures probably 124 whiplash-related events in 1 hour of operating on fast boats. Now, the average SWCC operator possibly endures 374,640 significant G-force impacts from wave pounding on SWCC boats in a deployment cycle. Pretty significant number there. Steve possibly endured that same number times 5, I would say, which equals out to about 1,873,000 plus significant full body impacts while wave slamming on SWCC boats, causing disastrous long-term effects of chronic orthopedic injury, whiplash, mTBI, and other issues. All right, so to put everything together and do a summary on operator syndrome symptoms for former SWCC operator Steve Chance. Etologically speaking, Steve, right now, 2023, this is January, Steve is a 60-year-old former SWCC operator with 15 years of SWCC boat service, 5+ SWCC deployment cycles, including 15,000 hours of SWCC boat time, causing an estimated 1.8 million significant full body impacts while wave pounding on SWCC boats. Steve has over 10+ symptoms of mTBI and a nexus of operator syndrome symptoms. Steve states he endured whiplash, wave pounding at significant G-forces, urinated blood, and experienced blackouts from full body wave pounding exposure. Steve stated he went to Tulane in 2022 and was diagnosed with TBI and PTSD symptoms, which impede his quality of life. Long-term effects of mTBI and major orthopedic injuries are debilitating for older SWCC operators like Steve and myself and all the other guys that I've talked to. Steve has a 100% disability rating, and At the onset of mTBI, injury symptoms were mild. Now 20 years beyond injury, they are severe and debilitating. Okay, so put your eyeballs on this. Here are the conclusions from this ongoing project. 100% of SWCC operators interviewed thus far have TBI across the board. I expect over the next year or two, as I interview a lot of guys, probably there's 1,000 guys out there I could probably interview. I'm going to find it 100% across 1,000 guys. 100% of SWCC operators interviewed thus far experienced full body weight pounding, whiplash, and orthopedic injury from SWCC fast boats. No surprise, no surprise. 100% of SWCC operators interviewed thus far still lack VA ratings for service-connected injuries. Hey, the reason for that is many of us were on the boats for a long period of time. Back in the 80s and the 90s, no one knew about traumatic brain injury back then. No one talked about it. We didn't go to medical. We didn't complain about it. We were never seen. We don't have a rating, and we don't have a diagnosis from DOD. This is a big problem for all of us older retired guys. And lastly, research on long-term effects of mTBI and chronic orthopedic injury is crucial for retired and former SWCC, as many have these debilitating injuries.